Hello there and welcome to another Coffee with Colin, and thank you for joining me. This week I want to talk to you about that urban myth that suggests that bumblebees can't fly. I'm sure you've come across it in the past. Bumblebees can't fly, or so it is said. However, we know that to be untrue because clearly bumblebees can fly. And I was watching a bumblebee during the week as I was sitting outside having a coffee, and I remembered hearing bumblebees can't fly, and I was watching it in flight and I thought to myself, I must investigate a little further. So let me tell you what I found out when I started checking it out. I found out that it was back in the 1930s when a French entomologist called Auguste Magnan, M-A-G-N-A-N, he came up with that phrase, bumblebees can't fly, because they simply look like they can't fly. They've got very large bodies and very small little wings. So just, picture a bumblebee there for a second. You've got a large body, you've got a tiny little wingspan, and then picture an airplane, a jet airplane with its long fuselage and its lovely wide wings, and imagine that the jet airplane had proportionately as small wings. Can you imagine what that might look like? And I don't think I'd get on a jet if it had wings proportionately as small as those of a bumblebee relative to its body. So I don't think you would either. So what's the difference? How can bumblebees fly when in fact their wings look like they're too small to perform the task? And the answer is very simply that they operate those wings in a particular way. Fixed wing aircraft are designed in such a way that when the air is flowing over the wing, it forces the air down, thus creating the lift required. And of course, the motion is created by the engines pulling the plane forward. Insect wings, bumblebee wings, clearly aren't fixed, but they're also not like those of a bird either. Birds create lift by flapping their wings up and down. Turns out bugs use a particular motion. They push their wing forward and then flip it over and pull it back, forward and back, forward and back, and that's what creates the lift for a bug, for a bumblebee. But clearly there's a lot of work associated with the little bumblebee trying to lift that massive body with these tiny little stubby wings flapping forward and back. So why are we talking about bees at all, Colin, I hear you ask? And it's a very good question. Let me explain. Because I was looking at little bumblebee and I was wondering, well, why is he putting in all that effort to fly when it's clearly, it looks uncomfortable for him. He's not a streamlined jet. It looks like it's difficult for him. And so when I was watching the little bumblebee in flight, and it looked quite difficult, he was putting a lot of effort in there. I wondered why would he do that when it's clearly not easy for him to do so. And it struck me that bumblebees don't fly because it's easy. They don't fly because they look elegant in flight. They simply fly because they have a job to do, and they've got a very important job to do. Bumblebees pollinate 1/3 of all the plant life on the planet. That's a very important job for a tiny little bumblebee. And it struck me when I began to think about the little bumblebee that you and I are very often like the bumblebee. We're more often like the bumblebee than we are the sleek jet plane. But society tries to teach us that we should be a certain height and a certain weight and a certain skin colour and a certain eye colour and, with gleaming white teeth, and that we should swan around wearing the latest fashion and just appear on red carpets, and that's what life is all about. So that's completely wrong. That's completely wrong. Imagine if we did away with all the red carpets on the planet. Who'd be upset? Few carpet manufacturers would be upset, for sure, right? But if you took away all the bin men on the planet, we'd all be very upset. Trust me, if we took away all the bin men, we'd all be very upset. If we took away all the bumblebees, we'd all be very upset. So what's all this got to do with you and I? Well, I think you and I need to embrace our inner bumblebee, to be honest, right? It doesn't matter if we're shorter than somebody else. It doesn't matter if we're taller than somebody else. It doesn't matter if we're wider than somebody else, or skinnier than somebody else, or older than somebody else, or younger than somebody else. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, okay? That's the bumblebee within us, right? We might have to work harder at something than somebody else who's perhaps more like the slim jet airplane, if you can get the analogy. We might have to work harder at something than somebody else. But hard work never killed anybody. And the real reason bumblebees fly is because they've got a job to do. And the real reason I'm suggesting that you embrace your inner bumblebee is that you've also got a job to do, as do I. No idea what your job is, not quite sure. I'm working out what mine is, right? But we've got a job to do. We've got a function to fulfill that only you or I can fulfill. Only you can be you. Okay, you can't be anybody else, and I can't be anybody else. So the bumblebee goes out and does his job every day, okay? And you and I need to go out and do our job every day, whatever our job is. The bumblebee's function is to pollinate plants, okay? What's your function? What's your pollination effect? I don't know. But you got to figure out what your pollination effect is. I got to figure out what my pollination effect is, and then I got to go and do it. Because if I don't do it, and if you don't do it, well then the world will be a poorer place. So why don't, in this next week, you commit to embracing your inner bumblebee, figuring out what it is that you're best in the world at, because you're the best in the world at being you for sure, right? You need to figure out what you're the best in the world at and then go do that. Take steps towards that. It mightn't be to do with your job. It could be to do with your hobby. It could be to do with something you're absolutely passionate about, but you've been suppressing for some reason. That's the inner bumblebee in you. And I'm suggesting, and I'm requesting, asking that you consider next week, look around for a little bumblebee. Watch him in flight, little mini superhero in flight, doing his job. And then embrace your own inner bumblebee and go pollinate the world in your own particular way, because nobody else can pollinate the world in the way that only you can. And thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colm. I hope and trust as ever that you got something from it. If you have done and you think somebody else would benefit, I'd be delighted if you'd pass the link on. If it's your first time here and you'd like more of this type of stuff, well then go to the homepage, colmobrien.motivation.com, leave me some details and I'll make sure you get a link like this every week. Most importantly, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. Embrace your inner bumblebee. And then equally as importantly, please come back next week and we'll share another coffee together and we'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. In the meantime, get some good coffee if you can, get some fresh air if you can, go find some bumblebees to watch them in flight and imagine what they're teaching you about your role in life. Get some fresh air, get some R&R. If you spend a lot of time alone, I recommend you go meet some people. If you spend a lot of time with people, I recommend you take a little time alone. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, embrace your inner bumblebee, get stuck in, make next week count, and I'll see you here this time next week. Sláinte. I love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.